Question number 3, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister. Does he stand by his response last week when asked whether the next 2 rounds of tax cuts legislated for last year will go ahead? Quote, "We live in dynamic times, but I wouldn't jump to conclusions on that. It is my expectation they will go ahead."
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, yes.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, supplementary question. Does he agree with Air New Zealand Chief Executive Rob Fyfe that, quote, "We need to stimulate this economy in effective ways than broad-brushed tax cuts? If not, why not?"
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Fyfe, as along with anyone else, is entitled to his own views about the right balance of government efforts to stimulate the economy. I would note that the travel and tourism industry relies on households having discretionary spending, and Mr. Fyfe's company will benefit from New Zealanders receiving tax cuts who decide that because of that they can afford to travel.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Supplementary question, Mr. Speaker. Does he then agree with economists Brian Gaynor and Gareth Morgan and the Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank, Grant Spencer, that tax cuts to those on higher incomes tend to get saved rather than spent, or perhaps used on overseas trips, as the Minister has said, and therefore don't meet the most important criterion in the current circumstances of being cost-effective in preserving and creating jobs?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, the government has been attempting to strike a balance between the short-term need to cushion people from the sharper edges of recession and the long-term need to lift our growth prospects. And as the government has always said, it's not going to try and tell people how to use the money. Those who have high debt or high credit card debt are going to use tax cut proceeds to reduce that debt, and they probably should do that. Others who don't have high levels of debt will spend it. We believe it's up to them to make that decision.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, why did the Prime Minister even bother holding the Jobs Summit if he intended to ignore the views of key participants such as Rob Fyfe and such as Stephen Tindall that the tax cuts needed to be properly targeted, as Labor's were, to achieve the best income in preserving and creating jobs? Or did he believe that $50 million for a cycle track was more important than the $4.5 billion which, if properly targeted, would have created tens of thousands of jobs? The
Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, one of the benefits of the summit was that it gave a number of people the opportunity to express views, and some of those views were different from the government's, and we were listening. But one thing I never heard them say, even where they disagreed with the government, none of them said, "We wish Labor were back."
The supplementary question, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister, Mr. Speaker,
the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, can the Minister tell the House one thing that came out of last Friday's Jobs Summit that will help the 160 workers at Sealords who have lost their jobs yesterday that I'll visit this afternoon, or the 120 workers at Wellsford at Irwin's who are likewise likely to lose their jobs this week?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, I think what did come out of the Jobs Summit was a strong resolve by everyone who participated, regardless of whether they support the government or not, to do everything we can to give those people the confidence that they will be able to get another job. And we all realise what a big and difficult challenge that is, but both the government and the participants at the summit are strongly committed to it.
Point of order, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
My question was very straightforward. It asked the Minister to tell the House one thing that the summit would do, and the Minister hasn't mentioned one thing.
The Minister, in answering the question on behalf of the Prime Minister, did say what the summit set out to do. Now, he may not have said the one thing the member might have wanted him to say, but he did set out what the summit sought to do, and I believe to that extent the question was answered. Question number 4. Point of order, Jeanette Fitzsimons.
I'm sorry, but in relation to question number 2, I seek leave to table a document. It's the executive summary of the report of the Australian Treasury from October 2008, which says the Treasury's modelling demonstrates early global action is less expensive than later action. A market-based approach allows robust economic growth into the future, even as emissions fall, and many industries will maintain.
I think we have a
competitiveness.
reasonable description of the document. Is there any objection to that document being tabled? There is none. Point of order, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I also seek leave of the House to table a document. If I just mention the different parts of it in one go rather than take several bites at it. They're comments from Rob Fife, Fran O'Sullivan, Brian Gaynor, Grant Spencer, Gareth Morgan, and they are sourced from various areas, including transcripts of Radio New Zealand and news media.
Could I just be clear? This is a composite document the member has prepared from press releases.
It's a document. In each case, the source is given, and in each case, of course, the person quoted says that the government was on the wrong track in targeting its tax cuts.
I thank the Honourable Member of the Opposition. Leave is sought to table a composite document made up of a set of press releases. Is there any objection to that? There is objection.